What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. All right, today's video, we're going to be talking about Astonishing Iceman #2, written by Steve Orlando with art by Vincenzo Caratu and color by Javier Tartaglia. This issue was pretty awesome because we got to see exactly how tactical Iceman can actually be. And it's not to say he's never done anything of this nature before, but one of the things that I feel Agent Pequod, the thing that he wasn't counting on, was just how ingenious Bobby Drake, aka Iceman, can actually be. Iceman is often known as a playboy, a braggart, and a jokester, a prankster, someone who doesn't take life too terribly seriously. But it's very easy to forget that this guy has been through some really harrowing events, things that have shaped him in ways that no one could honestly probably ever understand except for his fellow X-Men. Iceman showed that not only is he an Omega level mutant and incredibly powerful, but he's also able to think outside the box. One of the things I talked about when last we talked about Astonishing Iceman was the level of threat that a character like Helium could present to him, because as we have talked about in that video, and if you don't remember, the video's up here, you can go check it out up here, but I talked about how Helium doesn't freeze. So how does a guy whose whole gimmick is freezing things and controlling ice, how does one tackle someone like Helium? And he does it in a way that is very much on brand for Bobby Drake. He actually uses his powers in ways that I personally felt were just incredibly funny. Because as I said, he can't freeze the guy. Helium is literally made of helium. Now, granted, this iteration of helium is not entirely human per se. There's some weird science-y future tech stuff going on here with this version of helium. This is not the original helium, I don't believe, but they're using some of the same techniques and engineering tactics to recreate the elements of doom, here referred to as the elements of death. But what he's able to do is, if he can't freeze helium, that doesn't mean he can't put ice around helium. He's able to bottle helium up inside of a block of ice and send that block of ice into space. There's nothing helium can literally do because that ice is not going to melt. It's in the vacuum of space where it's said to be quite cold. While it may not be exactly the same as what has been depicted in some movies, it is still pretty damn cold. So yeah, that ice isn't gonna melt anytime terribly soon, and helium isn't going anywhere. That said, Agent Pequod has another weapon to throw at Bobby Drake in the next issue, and it's a character I think a lot of people aren't going to remember, and I thought this was actually pretty damn cool, even if it was a little weird. But the new character in question is someone that Agent Pequod doesn't even want to use. They even show us in what is effectively a data page, but they're showing us that the character in question, he is someone that even Pequod feels is too much, that there's someone who is a scorched earth kind of weapon, someone that you only put out unless you are absolutely sure you have no other option. A weapon who could just as easily destroy your enemies as easily as they could grant you mutually assured destruction, and that is Mr. Clean. Now, he's not referred to as Mr. Clean in this issue, but for those who may or may not remember, this is a character that actually goes back to 2001 in Uncanny X-Men number 395. Some people may or may not remember, but this is a character who was considered the 8th most dangerous person on Earth in regards to mutants. And while this isn't a guy who's racked up the body count of, say, people like Bolivar Trask, who has killed somewhere in the neighborhood of 16.5 million mutants, or even Wanda Maximoff, who depowered somewhere in the neighborhood of just short of 1 million some odd mutants. And this guy doesn't even have William Stryker numbers. He of the Burning Bus fame has killed at least 414 mutants at the time of House of X #4. But no, Mr. Clean is a guy who has a body count of at least 126 mutants, and that's no small feat, I would say, especially for a guy who isn't even as powerful as Wanda Maximoff or as driven as a William Stryker. Mr. Clean, who in this instance is referred to as the Cleaner or just Clean, is a guy whose skin was chemically treated with some kind of chemical compound that makes his skin incredibly resistant. Now, while he's not 100% invulnerable to all attacks. We have seen instances like in Uncanny X-Men number 398, where when he's facing off with Wolverine, Wolverine is incapable of actually dealing any meaningful damage to him with his adamantium claws. While they do seem to vaguely cut Mr. Clean, they don't do enough to actually harm him. The only way Wolverine was able to take down Mr. Clean, at least back then, was to damage the gas tank on his back and then light him on fire, which seemed to put him out of commission because we didn't see Clean from that moment forward, which was, once again, Uncanny X-Men 398 in 2001. Fast forward to over 20 years later, and we're only just now seeing him again. So we know for a fact that he can't be cut. He can't be permanently burned. The real question is, does he freeze? Not only that, but why Clean? I wonder exactly what Steve Orlando is going for here, and the only thing I can see being of any note here is that while Helium went after Bobby Drake's mother, which I also thought was a really nice touch because it actually brought these two characters back together. Iceman and his mother got to actually have a sit-down talk, while it was a brief one, but still, they got to hash out some things that his mother wished she would have done differently, and Iceman owning up to how childish and immature he used to be. And we even get some throwbacks to when his dad was still alive and used to actually have his own son's back. It was a moment that was actually reminiscent of 1968's Uncanny X-Men number 44, and it was like, oh wow, this is back when Iceman's dad used to not be a major league piece of shit. And we get to see those moments like that. So it was really cool to see that. But I feel like what's going to wind up happening here is that Pequod is picked Clean because he knows Clean is going to do whatever it takes. He's not going to care about casualties. And not only that, he's not connected with Orcas in any outwardly and open way. So that means Orcas would have plausible deniability in regards to whatever it is that he does. They can just claim ignorance like, oh, we don't know this guy. Orcas? Who's that? They did the same thing with Helium. Helium was programmed to act as if he wasn't with Orcas, even talking down about Orcas and how they don't do enough to get rid of mutant kind. Only to later, when it's just Helium and Iceman, to openly admit that he's working for Orcas, even if he didn't really intend to. So yeah, they're gonna use Clean as a way to not only take out Iceman, but they're also probably going to direct him in the very place that Pequod has managed to suss out Iceman is going whenever he disappears, which is in Antarctica, which means they're going to go after Romeo, and Clean is very likely not going to have any compunctions about breaking up their new happy home. There are some other really interesting things that come up here. Just the idea of how far Romeo's abilities can go. We know that whatever it is he's doing to keep Iceman alive, using his empathic abilities to hold Iceman together, to keep him from slipping off into the realm of death. Apparently there are limits. There's only so much that he can do before he loses complete and total control over Iceman. When Iceman leaves Earth's atmosphere to get rid of Helium, it's at that moment that Romeo's control is starting to slip. So if they go after Romeo, and it's not to say that Pequod knows about Romeo, but if they somehow figure it out, or if Clean gets there and is able to get his hands on Romeo and is able to kill him, it's going to be curtains for Iceman. Now, another thing to think about too in regards to sending Clean to Antarctica, should he get there, and he's already been experimenting on Inhumans because he's made it pretty clear he wants to know more about every conceivable enemy that he wants to go up against. He's going to have some interesting insight if he's able to get his hands on Romeo. So that is another reason why this could be a huge issue for Iceman, just beyond the notion of if something happens to him, then he loses his anchor and Iceman just dies just the same. So yeah, Iceman stands to lose a lot in his solo series, and I'm liking that, normally in Iceman comics, the stakes usually aren't always this high. So I'm really enjoying seeing that Steve Orlando's actually taking this opportunity to really throw the book at Iceman and, force him, galvanize him to, overcome every conceivable obstacle that Orcas is going to throw at him. So yeah, I love to see stuff like this. It's one of those things that I know people hate seeing their favorite characters. They always use the term in novelization and in comics, killing your darlings. I know people hate to see it, but honestly, I don't want to see Iceman thriving and being happy. I want to see him overcoming something, because when you're happy and thriving, you're not overcoming anything. You're just being you. And I feel like Iceman, I want to see him overcome. That's just me. If you enjoyed this video, do the YouTube thing, like, share, comment, subscribe, and make sure you hit that notification bell, because I put out multiple videos throughout the week, plus I live stream every Saturday. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, let me know what you thought about Astonishing Iceman #2. Keep it plus ultra, and sound off in the comments.